Hello, everybody. We're going to try something different today. I'm wondering if this is going to be something that works, and basically it's the kind of the same idea as what we have done for the streams, except instead of it being over while you are watching live, it is going to be me simply talking because as a way for you to be able to get the information that you need even while I am not there. So I'm going to ask everybody to make sure you're sitting up, make sure that you are listening, paying attention. Please stop talking while I'm talking. Man, I hope that that matches up. What if somebody... Never mind. And so hopefully this is going to be a format that you can understand. I want you to take notes. In Schoology right now, you should be opening up to your essential document. We are going to be talking about a few different terms. You will also notice in Schoology that I do have a assignment where I'm going to ask you to take notes. I'm going to ask you to write down information, a few different things that you find important, things that stick out to you while I talk. This will be for a grade. It's simply to make sure that you are not tuning me out and not listening at this time, that you are actually paying attention. And so hopefully this works. Hopefully you like it. If this is something that overwhelmingly people are like, this is stupid, then we will do something different. But if it works, we can use this. So let's go ahead and kind of jump right into it. Before we do, your quiz is going to be tomorrow, which means that tonight there will be a stream. It'll be starting at about 7:30. Because there is a One Kids worship practice. So about 7:30 to 8:30 will be the stream, just about an hour long. If you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to ask. It is going to be primarily on the information that you read in your textbook. There is the reading. Please make sure you have read. And then also what we're talking about today in this class. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into it. We've talked really about the politics. We have talked about the people. We have talked about the empire and the republic, the way that their country, how everything kind of worked together. What we haven't really talked about is a lot of their cultural significance, of the things that have made Rome. And so we're going to go ahead and discuss a few things. I've got a few pictures that I would like you to look at, to see, and we're going to talk through some of these things. And of course, the first one, whenever you think of Rome, of course, one of the first things you think of is, of course, the aqueducts. The aqueducts are one of the key features of Rome that are seen as defining factors. Rome was able to transport water long distances from different points of the world, from mountains that were up high and far away, all the way to their cities and to Rome within itself. Now, these are, of course, modern-day pictures of Rome, and obviously this one has cars within it. But this is a technological marvel. Because of these aqueducts, there is moving water within the city. We see that people are able to have within their homes water. Now, of course, that was only if you were rich and famous and you lived very strategically near these. But most of the time, what the aqueducts were used for were for water, bringing water into the city where it would then be able to be taken by those that are at wells and things of this nature. But also for the bathhouses, which were places we think of kind of pools, public pools of what they are today, but they would also be very similar to, honestly, a bathhouse. saunas and things where people would go to get clean, people would go to wash off. It wouldn't be the everyday shower that they would take, but rather more, it would be those special moments that they would go for this. Unless you were rich, in which it would take you all the way. You could go every day. Now, the way that these worked, this picture is actually very, it helps you understand. The way that it would work is they would do the math to understand from point A to point B, what trajectory did it need to go to be able to be on a downward slope from where the water started, whether it was mountain streams, whether it was snow or rivers, wherever it was coming from, up in the mountains, this fresh, clean water. They would understand the trajectory that it would need to travel from point A all the way back to Rome or whatever city it was traveling to. They would understand what it needed to be. And so they would create that line. Now, there would be instances like what we are looking at right now, where that line, which is the top, needed to be built upon. It wouldn't be, obviously, on the left-hand side, you can see that on the left-hand side, there's a slope up the riverbank, and on the right-hand side, there's a slope up the riverbank. But then within the middle of the actual river, there is no need for any sloping. It's very low. And so what they would do in these moments is they would add these arches. These arches would, of course, be the way that it would be strong enough to withstand the test of time. As we look at this one from the side, you can see how thick they are. Go ahead and take a look. As we are looking, I'm going to have to do it. Okay, this is the one I want. There we go. I've got a laser. We're going to just keep doing this live. Even there are going to be mistakes and things, but this is what would be happening if I was in class anyway. So as we look at it, you can see how thick these are, and the higher they go, the less they are. Now, up at the top, you would see this is where the water is going. And it would go, if you looked straight, you would see all the way, be able to follow it down the line of where they are, all along the water, traveling all along up here. And when it would get to moments where there is this slope, they would come in and build however many it would need. Arches is the word I was looking for. However many arches. Then up here you can see, because of they didn't need quite as high as big, and so they would do small ones. Now you might think to yourself, well, why arches? And it was twofold. Number one, they recognized that this is going to be stronger than just a straight wall. That is because the bricks are holding each other using the force of gravity, using the force, the physics of it. They are holding them together stronger than if they were just all resting. This meant that any storms, winds that would come through these areas would allow wind and other forces, water, rain, they wouldn't be beating against it, causing imminent collapse. Rather, it would circumvent a little bit of that damage and allow for that damage to only be on these areas versus the entire wall. These two factors and then the second factor is it's cheaper because there are less bricks to be used, and so they were able to go longer distances because all of this is not brick. And so these aqueducts, they exist to this day. This is modern day. Look at this car right over here. This guy in his red shirt and his jeans walking, lady with a green bag. But the aqueduct still is in Rome today. They are still in Italy today, lasting all of this time, all the way from the days they were built to modern day. Now, what would have happened is that along these lines, the water would have come into the city center, gone in, all the way in, and then as it comes and it curves around right in here, you can see that it would eventually come to central places, and these would be where the bathhouses would be. And usually these would be social clubs, social places for people to go. Usually the rich would be, they would have their own. The less rich but still had enough money would have the ability to go, and they would be able to have one that was a little less taken care of, a little grosser. But they had these available. This was moving water across all of this expanse, all of this land. It would be there. Now, as we are talking through Roman culture, what we have to understand is that Rome really didn't put much thought, it did not put much care into the arts. As we are looking at Greece, and we are looking at the influence of specifically and more particularly Athens, we see that they really don't have the same focus that the Greeks did. Athens had all of these writers, we had all of these thinkers, these philosophers, these people that would create and write, and they would, all of these things all coming together, and they would, but really when it comes to Roman culture, that didn't really exist. And what we see with Roman culture is honestly, most of it is borrowed from the Greeks. Between the Etruscans and the Greeks, the Etruscans being the people at the start of Rome that lived to the north, and the Greeks who had colonized in the south. Between these two, they were influencing everything when it came to Roman culture. They borrowed Latin from the Etruscans, who technically kind of had borrowed it from the Greeks, and changed it for their own wills and did what it needed to with it. And so what we find is that Rome did things basically what Greece did. And we see that with their sculptures. In particular, we see this same love of sculpting that the Greeks had. It continues on with the Romans. Now, the Romans, we find they don't focus on the entire body. Most of the time, what the Romans did were called busts. We're looking at one right now. What the busts is from about the shoulders-ish, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, to the top of the head. So we would not see most of the body. We wouldn't see legs or feet or anything of this nature. We would mostly see the face. What this means is we get to see some very accurate, very detailed pictures. I say pictures, but sculptures of faces. We can really begin to see some of the depth of these people. And so as we are looking at this one, you can see into the muscle structure of this man. You can see the wrinkles in forehead. You can see where the slight hairline ends on this obviously bald head. The wrinkles that are underneath. You can almost see the bags under his eyes. and to his neck. You can tell his age, that he is not young. He's hardened. He has a life. He has had a life. And we continue on as we see that they're these busts, that they are from the shoulders upwards. Now, this one I honestly include because I think it's funny how they do the curls. I'll give you a second. But if you're looking at this, looking at some of these, the curls and all of these, the details that are in it, I have no idea if you've ever tried to draw a fro or anything that is curly. We all end up drawing it the same way, and it's not very detailed. But the way that they are able to get in and they create this, at least you can understand what it is. The detail it is, and I love the details in the neck. As we look in, you can see the weight. You can almost see how he wears his weight. All from a sculpture. Next, again, we see another with the hair and the beard, the detail. What I am always struck by, and one of the reasons that we've included this one, is because of this is not a piece of cloth that was thrown over. This is stone still. All of this is still stone. And so it is sculpted in such a masterful way that we see that it looks like you could take it off of him and wear it yourself. The leather that is on his shoulder pads, it looks like it is worn leather, even though it is marble. This detail that would go into them, and this is one of my favorites simply because of the detail that goes into this. This looks like a photo. If you were to put pupils into these eyeballs, it looks like this could be real. The detail that goes into the scarring on this man's face. Again, as we see, the balding head that looks obviously shaved. And the fact we can tell that it was a shaved head versus a man who went bald. All because of a sculpture. This is a crazy amount of detail that went into these sculptures. And the last bust that we're going to look at is a man. His name is Cicero. This is Cicero. Everybody say hi, Cicero. Hi, Cicero. I hope you said it along with me. I bet you didn't. So this time, for real, you have to say it along with me. Yes, you do. Here we go. Hi, Cicero. All right, there we go. Thank you. This is Cicero, and Cicero is known as one of the premier writers of the Roman Empire. And he is one of the few, as we talk through the Roman Empire, as we look at their life and their writings, there are very few examples of writings from within Rome that were purely for poetry, that were for any of these other things. And this is because Rome as a whole doesn't put much weight to writing. Now, there are plenty of speeches, there are plenty of orators, people who said things. They've put a lot of effort and put a lot of weight on these things, but they didn't put a lot of weight into writing. For creativity, for the sake of creativity. And this is actually something for the whole of Rome. Creativity for the sake of creativity really did not exist. We had people who were very talented sculptors. We had people that were very talented at what they created. But the reason that they were creating was for a purpose. because we needed to remember the details of these people. They were worthy of their detail. They weren't creating because I've got a gift and I need to share it with the world. We don't see that. And it's because, as a whole, remember, as we talked about it from the beginning, they're really, truly, the idea was all for the glory of Rome. For the glory of Rome. Everything was for the glory of Rome. And we even see this in their pottery. We see that many people were not creating new systems. They were not creating and innovating. What they were doing was creating better systems on what already existed. One of the best potters were ones that could, not ones that created their own and drew on their own, but rather they were the ones that could best interpret and best recreate pottery from the Greeks or from the Etruscans or from these other places around the world, not creating their own, but rather recreating that which already existed. And so as we look at Cicero, he was a writer, and he stuck mostly to poetry. He was also consul for a while, and he also was very active politically. When we finally get there and we talk through the Renaissance, many people say that there are a few things that caused the Renaissance to come to fruition. It was a rediscovery of the Greek philosophers. It was a rediscovery of the Greek plays, and it was, many say, the writings of Cicero that start to bring this awareness of the old, of what used to be, and moved us out of what we know as the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages and into the Renaissance. And you can't talk about Roman culture without talking about the Colosseum. I want you to understand quite how large this is. This right here is a horse and buggy. If you've ever been to a large city, even Orlando has a few of them during like Christmas time and things like that. These are taller than a human. If you look right here, this right here is a human, and my thing isn't even like small enough to see. So if you look right above the red right now where I'm waving it, those are two people walking side by side. Next to it, if you look here, this guy in the yellow, he's right here, and you've got a few group of them that don't even come to this level where the arches start. They're not even tall enough. So I want you to understand the sheer size and scope. Now, when the Colosseum was originally constructed, this did go all the way around. It didn't just stop right here and go, okay, that's enough. It did continue around, but because of ruins, because of different battles, things, and just the sheer space of time, it is currently in this state. But if you ever have the chance to go to the Colosseum, I suggest going. It is awe-inspiring. It is massive. It is insanely huge. And so let's go ahead and look. We have a picture right here that kind of, you understand the depth of it. Because if you look in real close, like right here, all these little dots of color, those are people. Yes, these little dots right here, those are all individual people. And so then you understand the sheer size of this building. And so what you have to understand is, well, what am I looking at? This little half circle right here, it is currently uncovered. But that is because and I say half circle, it's actually, it's a more oval, but because of the fisheye, it kind of it distorts it a little bit. But basically, it would be covered just like this is here as well. So you understand this was the main arena floor. This is what it would be like. There would have been sand and other things in over the top of it. It's much like a basketball rink or ice skating rink that puts it over like a basketball rink. That's what happens whenever the Blackhawks play in the United Center in Chicago. It's this. The floor can move and but this would be over the top of it. This is where the chariot races would be. This is where the fights would be. This is where activities would be going on as they are fighting in the arena. But they have it taken off so that you can see underneath. Because about halfway through its lifespan, they revamped the entire building. And so underneath, what they did was they created a system of workings where you could be underneath. And so underneath would be cells for gladiators who were slaves. There would be then cages for animals that could jump up through the floor. There would be elevators to bring these fighters and these animals up instead of having to walk them through and walk them out. Now they would come up through the floor, much like Michael Jackson on the Thriller tour. And so this would be available for underneath where all of these cages and all of these for them to be. And then these would all have seats, and since the fade of time, they have worn away, but there would be seats, and it would have been stadium seating, much like a soccer or baseball stadium or an arena for basketball, any of these sports, much like what we would be thinking of today. This is where the seats would be, and up here we would have more, and it would be the cheap seats. And so as we are looking at this, we have to understand the huge scope and size of the Colosseum. But it was a modern marvel. Even today, to today's standards, they have done research. They have done extensive excavating to figure it out, because there had been rumors and people wondered. There had been legends that not only did they have regular battles, but every once in a while they would also have naval battles. Ships on water fighting against one another. And if you look at where it is, you don't see any, there aren't any lakes. There isn't a massive mountain where they could just, how could this be possible? And it's all because of the modern marvel of aqueducts. They've come to recognize that prior to this renovation that happened about halfway through its lifetime, what would happen is there would be pipes, and they would fill up with water, and they would be ready, and then it would fill up and fill this inner ring with water right before the first layer. And what they would do is they would have specially modified boats that had flat bottoms and they would reenact naval battles. Now, sometimes it would be reenactment, much more like a play than actual battle, but there were times that it was actually battle to the death and fights that would ensue. And so as we look through these details and recognize the depth of this building, it is truly a marvel. And so what we find is that the cultural advancements contained within Roman history, most of the time they were not art for the sake of art, but we see architectural. We see engineering marvels. We see these things because their focus was on what could be used. It had to have a purpose, because everything was to the glory of Rome. Another marvel was their road system. It said all roads lead to Rome, and that is because, number one, it was a very it was the cultural hub. Everybody wanted to be there because if you could, it's kind of like how all actors go to Hollywood or to LA, because if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And so, but what we also find is that these roads were actually modern marvel. There are, to this day, roads that exist that are still usable, even though they were built centuries ago. And they can't figure out how to fix the some of the roads that are in Longwood. Sorry, that's from my old apartment. That was, never mind. Moving forward. And so we see these, it's because they built them very specifically. And so it starts off that the first is this layer of sand. It would be dug out. This is where the line is for kind of where the actual ground begins. So they would begin by digging down, and then once it had a compacted layer of sand, they would pour sand, then compact it, more sand, compact, until it was basically much like if you've been to the beach and that sand that's like right where the water kind of is, and it's not loose and powdery, but it's basically feels like cement. That's exactly of what it was. Then they would take big rocks, big slabs of stone, and they would throw it down and cover it in cement. And these large stones would give it stability, but that has a tendency to break apart if too much pressure is put upon it, which is why it would then be crushed stone. These small little stones also put in cement, and so it had the strength of the large stones, but it also had the ability to take the pressure of the small stones. Then over the top of all of that would be the stone blocks. These would be specifically designed. If you look, it is very specific that these are the tallest and these are the shortest, and it goes in an arch from one side to the other. That is to help prevent rain from collecting and destroying. If it soaks in, then destroying all of this underneath. Instead, it would be drained out onto all of these different drains into the drainage ditch, and then kind of go on its merry way. This system meant that these stones were strong. They didn't have water weighing them down, water getting underneath and destroying all of the hard work of the stone cement and the cement that's underneath, meaning that these were extremely well built. And again, if you look here, it's 18 to 20 feet across. It's more than enough room for 3 to 4 carts to be able to go side by side, meaning that there weren't many traffic jams. Now, these roads that we see, this is not everywhere in the kingdom. It's not like every single road that you went on was to this level. But if this was a main thoroughfare, it lasted. Now, scientifically, they focused on engineering. They focused on architecture. But we also see just a little bit when it comes to the celestial bodies. And that is because they believe in the geocentric theory of the world. This is something that is changed during this time. During the Greeks, they believed that it was heliocentric for the most part. But then we see, because of some poor math by Ptolemy, which, I mean, to give him a little bit of credit, he's doing math that I, living in our current age, have no idea how to do. So I'm going to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Due to miscalculations, we see that actually this geocentric theory believes that the Earth is the center of the universe. The Earth. And so then we have the moon, and we have all of the other planets that come out depending on their varying distances out throughout the planet. They don't have, as you can see, they don't have the ability to see many planets out, but that's because we're unable. They did not have the technology required for it. And so as we see this geocentric theory, you have to make sure you understand that they believed in geocentric theory, the geocentric theory that the universe revolved around the Earth, not the sun, which is heliocentric, that it revolved around the Earth. Now, of course, we know that is not the case now, but they didn't then. And so as we are looking at all of this information for tomorrow's quiz, let me go ahead and we'll start at the beginning. Make sure you understand. Make sure you understand the aqueducts. Today, before I begin, today after this video, within your notes, I want you to do a little bit of research. Find a good, solid fact of the aqueducts or all of these different items I'm going to ask you to talk about that you didn't know before and that I didn't mention today in class. As you do this little bit of research, add these into your notes. So I want you to make sure you understand the aqueducts. Make sure you are looking at the busts. Make sure that you are, this is a hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. For your quiz tomorrow, make sure that you are recognizing that art in Rome was created out of necessity, not want. Things were creativity for the sake of creativity did not exist. It was rather necessity. You should know about the Colosseum. Make sure that you understand what happened in the Colosseum. I'm excited to see some of the facts that you find. I wasn't able to get into a lot of info about this, so I'd love to hear what you have to find about this. Make sure that you talk about the Roman roads and how, make sure you understand how great it was of a feat for them to be developed in this way. And then last but not least, the geocentric theory. Hopefully this is a medium that you like, that it works for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me tonight. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you tomorrow. Make sure that you turn in your homework, that assignment on Schoology. Have a good one.